I've seen countless soccer matches in my life, professional games with world-class athletes, high-stakes tournaments with millions of dollars on the line, but nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, compares to what I witnessed on that ordinary field in a forgotten corner of Detroit last spring. Have you ever seen courage in its purest form? Not the kind that comes with fame or recognition, not the kind that expects applause or validation, but the raw, unfiltered courage of someone who has nothing to lose and everything to give. That's what I saw that day, when a boy named Miguel Martinez changed everything. Miguel wasn't supposed to be special. An 11-year-old son of immigrants. His father worked 2 jobs as a janitor and dishwasher. His mother cleaned houses in the wealthy suburbs. They lived in a small apartment in one of those neighborhoods people warn you not to visit after dark. Miguel wore second-hand cleats and shorts that were slightly too big for his small frame. In a city full of struggling families, he was just another face, another story, another kid trying to find his place in the world. The West Side Youth Soccer League was the pride of our community. Not because we had the best facilities, far from it. Our fields had more dirt patches than grass. Our goals were held together with duct tape and hope. But it was a place where kids from all backgrounds came together. Rich kids from the suburbs, poor kids from the inner city, black, white, Hispanic, Asian. For 2 hours every Saturday, differences melted away on that field. At least that's what I believed until that spring day. I was a volunteer coach, not because I knew much about soccer, though I played a bit in college, but because someone needed to step up. Someone needed to be there for these kids. In my regular life, I worked as an accountant. Numbers, spreadsheets, tax codes. But on weekends, I traded my calculator for a whistle and found more meaning in teaching kids how to dribble than I ever did balancing corporate accounts. Our team, the West Side Warriors, was a mix of everything Detroit had to offer. We had Jackson from the wealthy Bloomfield Hills area, whose parents showed up in a Mercedes and brought organic snacks for everyone. We had Darnell and Marcus, cousins from the East Side, talented and quick, who took 3 buses just to make it to practice. We had Sophia, whose determination made up for her lack of natural ability. And we had Miguel, quiet Miguel, who rarely spoke but never missed a practice even when he had to walk 2 miles to get there. Then there was Kyle. Kyle Adams was the team's star, tall for his age, with natural athleticism and private coaching since he was 5. His father was some executive at one of the car companies, the kind of man who wore expensive suits and checked his watch impatiently during games, as if he had more important places to be. Kyle had the newest cleats, the fanciest gear, and the kind of confidence that came from never having to wonder if he belonged. The dynamic of our team was complicated, as it often is with kids that age. They formed their little groups, they had their inside jokes, they established their pecking order, and somewhere near the bottom of that order was Owen Fisher. Owen was new to the team, new to the sport really. His mother had signed him up hoping it would help with his confidence. Owen was slightly overweight, wore thick glasses, and moved with an awkwardness that seemed to invite ridicule. He tried hard, maybe too hard, and that somehow made it worse. Every missed kick, every stumble became an event, a spectacle for others to enjoy at his expense. I noticed the looks. I heard the whispers. I saw the isolation during water breaks. As coaches, we try to address these things, but we can't be everywhere. We can't control every interaction. We can't force kindness. It has to come from within. The incident happened during our Saturday morning practice. We were doing scrimmage games, dividing the team into small groups to play against each other. I was watching one group when I heard it start from the other field. Laughter, then chanting. By the time I turned around, it had already escalated. Owen had tripped while trying to stop a ball, landing face first in one of our many mud patches. His glasses were askew, his face and jersey smeared with dirt. And rather than help him up, a circle had formed. Kyle was at the center, pointing and leading the others in some chant about Pigpen and Mud Boy. Not all the kids joined in. Some looked uncomfortable, some looked away, but no one, not one person, stepped forward to help. No one except Miguel. I was already moving toward the scene, ready to intervene, when I saw him break from the crowd. Small, quiet Miguel, who barely spoke above a whisper during team meetings, stepped into the circle. He walked directly to Owen, extended his hand and helped him up. What happened next still gives me chills when I think about it. Miguel turned to face Kyle. The field went quiet. Even from where I stood, I could see Kyle's smirk. the dismissive look he gave the smaller boy. "Leave him alone," Miguel said. His voice was clear, surprisingly steady. Kyle laughed. "What are you going to do about it, charity case?" The words hung in the air, sharp, cruel, intended to cut Miguel down, to remind him of his place. Miguel didn't flinch. He didn't back down. Instead, he did something completely unexpected. "I challenge you," he said. The team erupted in oohs and excited chatter. In the unwritten rules of childhood, a challenge was serious business. To what? Kyle asked, still smirking but now slightly wary. "A penalty shootout. 5 shots each. If I win, you apologize to Owen in front of everyone and you leave him alone. Forever." Kyle laughed again, but there was less certainty in it now. "And when you lose?" Miguel didn't hesitate. "I'll clean your cleats for the rest of the season." By now I was close enough to intervene, but something held me back. Something told me this needed to play out. The teams gathered around the goal. Kyle went first, confidently placing the ball on the penalty spot. He was our best striker, rarely missing even against proper goalkeepers. And Miguel? Miguel usually played defense, not because he was particularly good at it, but because nobody else wanted that position. Kyle scored easily on his first shot, and his second. The third hit the post but went in. His smirk grew with each goal. Then it was Miguel's turn. His first shot was weak, but accurate. It went in. The second was better. The third caught everyone by surprise with its power. After 3 rounds, the score was tied 3-3. Kyle's fourth shot blazed past the left post. A miss. The crowd gasped. Kyle's face darkened. Miguel stepped up for his fourth attempt. The field was completely silent. He took a deep breath, ran up, and struck the ball cleanly. It sailed into the top corner. 4-3. Kyle's final shot had to go in to keep him in the game. He placed the ball carefully, backed up, and struck it hard. Too hard. It flew over the crossbar and kept going, landing somewhere in the scrubby trees beyond the field. The crowd was stunned. Kyle Adams didn't miss twice in a row. Ever. For the winning shot, Miguel placed the ball deliberately. His worn cleats dug into the dirt as he backed up. There was no hesitation, no uncertainty in his approach. The ball left his foot with perfect spin, curving beautifully into the corner of the net. 5-3. Game over. What followed was a moment of complete silence, then a roar from the team. Even I couldn't help but cheer. It was a perfect underdog moment. David defeating Goliath with nothing but courage and skill. Kyle stood frozen, his face a mix of disbelief and anger. His father, watching from the sidelines, looked equally shocked. "Apologize," Miguel said, turning to Kyle. That was the deal. For a moment I thought Kyle might refuse, might storm off the field. His father was already walking toward us, his expression unreadable. But then Kyle did something that surprised me. He looked at Owen, who was standing awkwardly at the edge of the crowd, still brushing dirt from his jersey. "I'm sorry, Owen," he said. The words were stiff, reluctant, but they were spoken loud enough for everyone to hear. Owen nodded, a small smile forming. It could have ended there, should have, really. But Miguel wasn't finished. "Now help him clean up," he said. A murmur went through the crowd. This was pushing it. Kyle's face flushed. Before Kyle could respond, his father reached us. Mr. Adams was an imposing figure in his casual weekend clothes that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. He put his hand on Kyle's shoulder. I braced myself for what might come next. An angry tirade, a demand that Miguel be disciplined, a withdrawal of the sizable donation the Adams family had made to our humble league. "Do what he says, Kyle." "Mr. Rowe," Adams said quietly. Kyle looked up at his father in disbelief. "You made a bet. You lost. Now follow through." Then, to my continued surprise, Mr. Adams looked at Miguel with something like respect. "Good shooting, young man." What happened next was even more remarkable. Kyle walked over to the water cooler, grabbed some paper towels, dampened them, and returned to Owen. Without a word, he helped wipe the mud from Owen's jersey and face. The team watched in stunned silence. Then slowly they dispersed, heading back to their positions for the remainder of practice. But something had shifted. I could feel it in the air. After practice ended, I found Miguel packing up his things, getting ready for his long walk home. "That was a brave thing you did today," I told him. He shrugged, not meeting my eyes. "Owen's nice. They shouldn't pick on him just because he's different." "How did you get so good at penalty kicks?" I asked. In all our practices, I'd never seen him shoot like that. A small smile crossed his face. My dad, he works as a janitor at the community center. After his shift, sometimes he takes me to the gym. We practice against the wall. I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. Well, you were amazing today. Thanks, coach. He hoisted his bag and started to leave, then paused. Do you think Owen will be okay now? I think you made sure of that, I replied. He nodded, satisfied, and continued on his way. I watched him go, this small, unassuming boy who had just taught everyone, including me, a lesson in courage. The following week, our practice had a different energy. Owen arrived early, looking nervous, but hopeful. Kyle was quieter than usual, less prone to showing off. And Miguel? He was the same as always, focused, hard-working, and seemingly unaware that he had become something of a team hero. But the real change came during our water break. Owen was standing alone as usual when Kyle walked over to him. I was too far away to hear what was said, but I saw Owen nod. Then Kyle called to some of the other boys, and suddenly Owen was part of the group, being included in whatever conversation middle school boys find so fascinating. From across the field, I caught Miguel watching the scene, a small smile on his face. When it was time to divide into scrimmage teams, Kyle did something unprecedented. As team captain, he had first pick. Owen, he said, you're with me. The look on Owen's face, pure surprise followed by beaming joy, was worth everything. His second pick was even more telling. Miguel, he called. And just like that, 3 boys who could not have been more different, one privileged, one bullied, one humble, became an unlikely alliance on the field. They lost their scrimmage game that day, badly. Owen missed several easy passes. Miguel was out of position more than once. Kyle, trying to set up his new teammates rather than score himself, didn't play to his strengths, but watching them walk off the field together, laughing despite the loss, I knew something more important had been won. Word of what had happened spread through our small league. Parents talked, kids talked more. By our next game, Miguel had become something of a local legend, the boy who stood up to the team star and won. But if he noticed the attention, he didn't show it. What he did notice was that Owen wasn't standing alone anymore. What he did notice was that Kyle, for all his privilege and talent, seemed lighter somehow, less burdened by the need to dominate. What Miguel noticed were the changes that mattered. The season continued. We won some games, lost others. Owen improved, slowly but steadily. Kyle remained our top scorer, but became more of a team player. And Miguel? Miguel remained in defense, quiet and dependable. One rainy Saturday in late April, I arrived at the field to find Mr. Adams waiting for me. Can we talk? He asked. I nodded, expecting a complaint or concern. I wanted to thank you, he said instead. For what? For whatever you're teaching these kids. It's more than soccer. I shook my head. I wish I could take credit, Mr. Adams, but what happened was all Miguel. Some things can't be taught. They have to be witnessed. He nodded thoughtfully. My son has changed, in good ways. He talks about his teammates now, about Owen's improvement, about Miguel's defensive skills. Before, it was always about his own stats, his own goals. Kids that age are usually self-centered, I offered. It wasn't just his age, Mr. Adams admitted. It was us, his mother and me. The pressure we put on him, the emphasis on being the best, on winning at all costs. He looked out at the empty field, rain falling softly on the patchy grass. I'm a VP at Ford. I compete every day. I forgot that my son isn't in a boardroom, he's on a playground. Before I could respond, cars began pulling up. Parents and players arriving, ready to brave the rain for another Saturday morning of youth soccer. Anyway, Mr. Adams said, straightening up, I just wanted you to know it's made a difference at home too. As the season neared its end, something unexpected happened. Miguel stopped coming to practice. 1 absence was unusual for him. 2 was concerning. By the 3rd, I called the contact number on his registration form. His mother answered, her English halting but clear enough. Miguel's father had been injured at work. A bad fall. He couldn't work. They were struggling. Miguel had taken on a paper route in the mornings, was helping a neighbor with yard work in the afternoons. Soccer, as much as he loved it, was a luxury they couldn't afford right now. The bus fare, the time away from potential work, it added up. I thanked her for explaining. expressed my hope that his father would recover quickly, and ended the call with a heavy heart. At our next practice, I explained the situation to the team. They listened solemnly. "So he just can't come anymore? That's it?" Owen asked, distressed at the idea of losing his defender. "Unless his dad gets better quick or they figure something out," I confirmed. The practice that followed was subdued. Miguel's absence was felt more deeply than I expected. He wasn't our star player, wasn't the most vocal leader, but somehow his quiet presence had become essential to the team's chemistry. After practice, Kyle lingered, helping me collect cones and balls. "Coach, I've been thinking," he said. "About what?" "About Miguel. It's not fair that he can't play just because of money." I sighed. "Life isn't always fair, Kyle. But we could make it fair," he insisted. "My dad gives me an allowance every week. I could use that for Miguel's bus fare." I was touched by the offer but shook my head. "That's very generous, but I'm not sure Miguel or his family would be comfortable accepting that kind of help." Kyle frowned, considering this. "Then what about a team fund? Everyone contributes a little, for emergencies and stuff. Not just for Miguel, but for anyone who needs it." I looked at him with new respect. "That's actually a good idea, but you'd have to convince the other parents." "I'll talk to my dad first," Kyle said confidently. "He'll know how to set it up." And that's exactly what he did. The following Saturday, Mr. Adams presented the idea at our pre-game parent meeting. A team emergency fund with anonymous donations and disbursements, managed by 2 parent volunteers. The funds could be used for transportation, equipment, or any other need that might prevent a player from fully participating. To my surprise, the parents embraced the idea enthusiastically. Jackson's mom immediately offered to match the first $500 raised. Darnell and Marcus's grandmother suggested bake sales to supplement the fund. Even parents who I knew were struggling themselves nodded in agreement with the plan. By the end of the meeting, over $700 had been collected, and a system was in place for players to request help without embarrassment or exposure. Kyle, standing by his father's side, looked more proud of this accomplishment than any goal he'd ever scored. That afternoon, after our game, which we won, though not by much, Mr. Adams and I drove to Miguel's apartment complex. It was in a part of town I rarely visited, a cluster of aging brick buildings with bars on the lower windows. Miguel answered our knock, surprise evident on his face. "Coach? Mr. Adams? Can we come in?" I asked. He hesitated, then nodded, opening the door wider. The apartment was small, but immaculately clean. Family photos lined one wall. The furniture was worn but well cared for. From another room I could hear the murmur of a television and the sound of someone coughing. "My father," Miguel explained, gesturing toward the sound. "He's resting. We won't stay long," I promised. "We just wanted to talk to you about coming back to the team." Miguel's face fell. "I told my mother to explain." "She did," I assured him. "And we understand. That's why we're here." Mr. Adams took over, explaining the new team fund. He was careful with his words, emphasizing that many families might need help at different times, that accepting assistance wasn't charity but team support. "The team misses you, Miguel," I added, "especially Owen, and our defense hasn't been the same." Miguel looked torn. "I want to come back, but I need to help my family right now." "The paper route, how much does it pay?" Mr. Adams asked. $20 a week. Mr. Adams nodded. "What if we found you something better? The community center where your dad works, they need help with their youth program on weekends. More money, fewer hours, and you'd still have time for soccer." Miguel's eyes widened. "Really? They'd hire me?" "I called the director this morning," Mr. Adams confirmed. "They already know you from your father. They'd be happy to have you help with the younger kids' soccer program on Saturday afternoons, after our games." I watched as Miguel processed this information, the conflict on his face slowly resolving into hope. "I should ask my parents," he said finally. "Of course," I agreed. As if on cue, a door opened and an older man appeared, leaning heavily on a cane. Miguel's father. Despite his obvious pain, he carried himself with dignity. "Papa, this is my coach and Mr. Adams, Kyle's father," Miguel explained in English, before switching to Spanish to relay our offer. Martinez listened, his eyes moving between his son and us. When Miguel finished, he addressed us directly, his English accented but clear. "My son tells me you have created a fund to help players in need," he said. "Yes, sir," Mr. Adams confirmed. "For transportation, equipment, Whatever might be a barrier to participation. Mr. Martinez nodded slowly. And this job at the community center? It is real work, with real pay, not charity disguised as employment? Absolutely real, Mr. Adams assured him. They need the help, and from what I hear, Miguel is good with kids. The director was quite enthusiastic when I mentioned him. Mr. Martinez studied Mr. Adams for a long moment, then turned to his son. Do you want this, Miguel? To return to your team? To take this job? Miguel nodded, a rare display of eagerness breaking through his usual reserve. Yes, Papa, very much. Mr. Martinez turned back to us. Then we accept your help. And when I am recovered, we will contribute to this fund for others. The pride in his voice, the determination to give back even in their circumstances, struck me deeply. Miguel returned to practice the following week. The team welcomed him with cheers and high fives. Owen, in particular, seemed overjoyed, shadowing Miguel throughout warm-ups as if afraid he might disappear again. Kyle, I noticed, handled the situation with unexpected maturity. There was no mention of charity or saviors, no expectation of gratitude or special treatment. He simply nodded to Miguel during team huddle and said, "Good to have you back. We missed our wall in defense." Miguel nodded back, a small smile playing at his lips. "Looks like you needed it. I heard about the Douglas game." Just like that, they were teammates again. Different backgrounds momentarily irrelevant in the face of a common goal and shared respect. Our final game of the season was against the Rangers, the top team in our division. They were undefeated, with a goal differential that made most opponents dread facing them. On paper, we didn't stand a chance. But something strange happened in the days leading up to that game. Our team, once a collection of individuals from vastly different worlds, began to gel. Practice took on a new intensity. Players who rarely spoke to each other were suddenly strategizing together. Kyle, Owen, and Miguel formed an unlikely trio of leaders, each contributing in their own way. The day of the game dawned bright and clear. As I watched the team warm up, I noticed something different about their demeanor. There was no fear, no resignation to inevitable defeat. Instead, there was a quiet determination, a collective focus that I hadn't seen before. The Rangers arrived in their matching warm-ups, their well-funded, well-trained squad exuding confidence. Their coach, a former college player with a reputation for intensity, barely acknowledged me with a nod. The game began as many expected, with the Rangers dominating possession. Their passes were crisp, their movements coordinated. Within 10 minutes, they had taken 5 shots on goal, but something unexpected was happening on our side. Miguel, usually reserved to a defensive position, was directing traffic, organizing our backline with the authority of a seasoned captain. Owen, whose main contribution had typically been enthusiasm rather than skill, was marking their striker with surprising effectiveness. And Kyle, instead of trying to do everything himself, was distributing the ball, creating opportunities for his teammates. We bent but didn't break. The first half ended scoreless. In the huddle at halftime, I expected to give an encouraging speech about moral victories and playing with pride regardless of the outcome. But before I could speak, Kyle stepped forward. "We can win this," he said simply. "They're getting frustrated. They expected to be up by 3 goals by now." Miguel nodded in agreement. "Their right side is weaker. If we attack there, we can create chances." Owen, still catching his breath, added, "Their number 10 doesn't like physical contact. He backs off if you stay close." I looked at them in amazement. These kids, who months ago had barely interacted, were now a cohesive unit, analyzing the game with insight beyond their years. "All right then," I said. "Let's follow your plan." The second half began with renewed energy from our side. Following Miguel's observation, we focused our attacks down the right flank. Kyle, playing with newfound unselfishness, set up Sophia for a good chance that went just wide. The Rangers, clearly frustrated by their inability to score, began to press harder, leaving spaces behind their defense. In the 65th minute, their center back made a mistake, misplaying a pass that Kyle intercepted. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Kyle dribbled forward, but instead of shooting himself as he would have earlier in the season, he looked up and saw Owen making a run into space. The pass was perfect, leading Owen just enough. Owen, the boy who had once been the team's easiest target, took one touch to control the ball and another to slot it past the onrushing goalkeeper. 1-0 to the Warriors. The sideline erupted. Parents leaped to their feet screaming encouragement. Even Mr. Adams, usually reserved in his support, was jumping up and down. The Rangers, stunned by the turn of events, immediately went on the offensive. For the final 15 minutes, it was all hands on deck. Miguel organized our defense like a general, shifting players to meet each attack, calling out warnings, offering encouragement. Owen, exhausted but determined, continued to chase every ball. Kyle dropped deeper, helping defend our slim lead rather than looking for personal glory. In the final minute, the Rangers won a corner kick, their last chance to salvage a draw. Their tallest player positioned himself in the box, ready to attack the incoming cross. The ball curved in beautifully, finding its target. The header was powerful, directed toward the bottom corner of our goal, and then, from nowhere, Miguel appeared, diving full length to block the shot with his body. The ball rebounded to a Ranger player who shot again, only to find Kyle in the way. The third attempt was cleared desperately by Owen, sending the ball upfield as the final whistle blew. 1-0. Victory against all odds. Our team converged in a chaotic celebration, jumping, hugging, some even crying with joy. From the bottom of the pile emerged our unlikely trio of heroes, Kyle, Owen, and Miguel, arms around each other's shoulders, faces split with identical grins. The Rangers, to their credit, lined up for handshakes with grace in defeat. Their coach approached me afterward. "I don't know what you've been doing with these kids," he said, "but that was impressive. Not just the win, the way they played for each other." I nodded, accepting the compliment, though I knew the credit belonged elsewhere. They taught themselves the most important lessons. After the Rangers departed, and our own parents began loading kids into cars, I found Miguel, Kyle, and Owen sitting on the bench, still buzzing from the victory, but quieter now, savoring the moment. "I'm proud of you boys," I told them, "not just for winning, but for how you won." They looked up at me, three completely different kids who would have never chosen each other as friends, now bound by something stronger than circumstance. "Miguel," I said, "that save at the end was world class." He shrugged, embarrassed by the praise. "I just didn't want to let the team down." "And Owen," I continued, "that finish was perfect. All those extra practices paid off." Owen beamed. "Kyle made it easy with that pass." Kyle, who once would have soaked up any compliment without sharing credit, shook his head. "Team goal all the way. Miguel won the ball. I saw the opening. Owen finished it. That's soccer." In that moment, looking at these three boys, I understood that what had happened over the past few months went far beyond sports. It wasn't just about winning a game or improving skills. It was about breaking down barriers of wealth and status, of appearance and ability. It was about a small boy with worn-out cleats finding the courage to stand up for what was right, even when it would have been easier to stay silent. It was about a privileged child learning that true leadership isn't about dominance, but about lifting others up. It was about a bullied kid discovering his own worth through the acceptance and encouragement of others. After the boys left with their families, I stayed behind, picking up equipment and reflecting on the season. The field was quiet now, the patchy grass illuminated by the late afternoon sun. It wasn't much, just a small patch of land in a city full of challenges. But on this humble field, something remarkable had happened. Three boys had changed each other, and in doing so, they had changed everyone around them. The following week, at our end-of-season party, we handed out the usual awards: most goals, most improved, best sportsmanship. But I had created a special award, one that wasn't on the official list, the Courage Award. When I called Miguel's name, the room erupted in applause. His parents, both present, his father now walking with just a slight limp, looked on with evident pride as their son made his way forward. "This award," I explained to the gathered families, "is not for scoring goals or making saves, though Miguel did both this season. It's for showing us what real courage looks like, for reminding us that standing up for others is the greatest victory of all." Miguel accepted the small trophy with characteristic humility, his eyes downcast, a slight flush on his cheeks. "Would you like to say something?" I asked him quietly. He hesitated, then nodded. Turning to face the room, he spoke in a clear voice that carried to every corner. "Thank you for this award, but I don't think courage is doing something big one time. I think it's doing small right things every day, even when it's hard." He paused, glancing at Owen and Kyle, "And I learned that I'm not the only brave one on this team. The simplicity and wisdom of his words hung in the air, touching everyone present. Later, as families mingled over pizza and soda, I overheard snippets of conversation. Parents who had barely acknowledged each other at the beginning of the season were now exchanging phone numbers, planning carpools for the fall season, discussing summer plans. Mr. Adams was deep in conversation with Miguel's father, something about a potential maintenance position opening up at his company once Mr. Martinez was fully recovered. Owen's mother was chatting with Sophia's parents about a summer reading program they were organizing for kids in the neighborhood. Boundaries were dissolving, connections forming, all because 3 boys had shown the adults what was possible. As the party wound down, I found myself standing with Miguel, Kyle, and Owen once more. "So," I asked them, "will you all be back for the fall season?" They exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between them. "Definitely," Kyle answered for all 3. "We have a championship to win." Owen nodded enthusiastically. "And Miguel's going to teach me that diving block." Miguel smiled, a full, genuine smile that transformed his serious face. "And I'm going to work on my shooting. I want to score next time." I looked at them, the privileged kid, the bullied kid, and the humble kid, now just 3 friends, 3 teammates, 3 parts of something bigger than themselves. "I can't wait to see what you do next," I told them, meaning every word. As I watched them walk away together, laughing about some private joke, I thought about the power of small moments of courage, how they ripple outward, touching lives in ways we can never fully anticipate or measure. Miguel hadn't set out to change the team dynamics, to break down social barriers, to create a more inclusive environment. He had simply seen someone being mistreated and decided to take a stand. One small action, motivated by basic decency and empathy. That's all it takes sometimes. One person willing to be uncomfortable, one person willing to risk ridicule or rejection, one person willing to say, "This isn't right." In a world that often feels divided beyond repair, I found hope on that patchy soccer field in Detroit. Hope that the next generation might do better than we have. Hope that small acts of courage, multiplied across countless communities, might eventually add up to the change we need. The West Side Warriors weren't just a soccer team anymore. They were proof that barriers can be broken, that unlikely friendships can form, that courage is contagious. And it all started with one small kid in worn-out cleats, standing up when it would have been easier to stay silent. Sometimes the biggest changes begin with the smallest voices. We just need to be brave enough to listen. Take a deep breath and leave a like if this story touched you. Subscribe so you won't miss more stories of hidden courage that change lives. Comment below which part moved you the most. Was it Miguel's stand against bullying, Owen's goal, or Kyle's transformation? Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that small acts of courage can create ripples of change in our world.